Hey, what's happening, everybody? I'm Tommy, and you are on the boat. Carolina, Canada, I'm glad you're here. Hope you're feeling better. Ashley G, what's up? Diane, Mike Bragg. Hello, Heather. Audra in Denver. Not blocked, in case you're checking. Glad that you are here. Kristen Melinda is here. I am glad that you are here. She's kind of a super mod, you know. Roberta, what's happening? Heather Rhodes, I'm glad that you are here. So it's going to get crazy, people. Hey, Kathy Clarinet. So let me tell you why we're talking about this again. There are, pardon me, there are true crime cases, yeah, and then there are true crime cases. And here's the thing. We've done a lot of true crime since we started hanging out with one another. And there have been some cases that really grabbed people's attention, and nothing is going to be bigger than this one. I'm sorry. It's just kind of the way it is. Whitby Island Girl, good to see you. Chase the Heat. There's my brother. That's the Johnny Scoville. You fell and hit your head. Can we get some thoughts and prayers for Carolina, Canada, please? Get some ones up there. Disclosure, Aaron, what's happening? Hello, Lisa White. So here's the deal. Hey, Cricket. This is a little self-care is a good thing, Cricket. I'm glad. Big fire in the fireplace. Just finished a foot peeling mask. I'm not sure I've ever done a foot peeling mask. It's kind of a frightening concept. Guy with his feet my size. This is going to be wild for a lot of reasons. So let's start with at the top. By the way, I'm going to get to some stuff here that's a little less fun to talk about. There's some gruesome details that are already kind of coming out about this. Aspire to inspire. This is going to be a case that from time to time, hello, it's my girlfriend. Yeah, what are the odds? This is going to be a case that's going to be difficult to talk about from time to time. When someone shoots someone, it's hard. Jamie Palmer, good to see you. When it is matricide, killing one's mother, or patricide, killing one's father, it's going to be tough to talk about. When you do it with a weapon, right? That's going to be a pretty ugly thing to talk about if the weapon happens to be really personal. And a knife is one of the most personal ways that you can kill a person. It's intimate, for lack of a better way to put it. And if that sounds bad, it just is. You have to get on top of somebody in order to do this. Island Girl, good to have you here. This is a horrible story, and it's going to get a lot stranger. So as I talked about last night, this kind of started, right, at a party that was thrown by a fairly famous guy, right? Conan O'Brien had a Christmas party, and I guess this is a very regular occurrence in every year in Hollywood. And the Reiner family went. So Rob Reiner, his wife Michelle, and their son Nick were all at the party. Everybody was in black tie, right? This is one of those events where people wear tuxedos, right? Women wear, gowns and such. And hello, Roberta. And they really get kind of dressed up for this rascal. He showed up in a hooded sweatshirt and seemed to not have the ability to talk to a lot of the people there. Everybody there is famous. I mean, there may be some names that you don't know of because they work behind cameras or they're script people or whatever, but they're all Hollywood elite. There aren't going to be a lot of people that at this party that aren't rich, well-known, kind of the cream of the crop of Hollywood, right? Hello, Natalie. Good to see you. I'm glad that you are here. So all of these people are going to end up on a witness list. And America gets fascinated when famous people have to go to court, right? Look at the Johnny Depp case. Anytime there's somebody that we get to see kind of a different part. Hello from England. Ali, how are you? Anytime we get to look at these people in circumstances that aren't their normal circumstances, people become fascinated by it. So that's going to be coming. Hello, John. And no matter how much this seems like a cut and dry case, and when I tell you some of the stuff that they found out already, it's going to sound like it's a cut and dry case. But if they get a really good attorney, then very crazy things happen. Think O.J. Simpson, right? When you get a very, very high-powered attorney, someone who's very, very talented, sometimes you've got some issues. You may remember the case in Massachusetts, the Karen Reed trial, where this is a woman who allegedly had hit her boyfriend, who was a cop, with a car, right? And the attorney that came in to take over the Karen Reed case was a man named Alan Jackson. And a lot of us watched this case. A lot of people who are into true crime followed the Karen Reed murder trial closely. And Alan Jackson's a beast, right? He worked with Harvey Weinstein. He has covered some really big names, and he is big time expensive. This is not a guy that that you hire for a couple of bucks. This is really tough, right? This is a case that is going to cost a crap pile of money. Alan Jackson somehow has been retained to represent this guy. He doesn't have his own money, right? Nick has been surviving by all accounts on his parents' money. And for a long time, by the way. This is not a guy that really has generated a whole lot of money. He did the one film that he co-wrote with somebody, and his father made a film out of. It was not a high-grossing film. If anything, they probably didn't do very well on it because the subject matter was hard. It was about a drug addict. It was about a heroin addict. These aren't the kind of films that a lot of people watch because they're not entertainment in the eyes of most people. They may be poignant and they may be beautifully done, but you don't get a whole lot of people watching, right? This kid can't afford this guy. Now, very often, and we've all seen this before, this is not going to be news to anybody, but very often, Wes Lightberg, good to see you. Very often, high dollar attorneys will take cases like this. Poignant isn't comfortable. Well played. Yeah, Being Charlie. Thank you, Audrey and Denver. That was the name of the film. And it's sort of autobiographical, right? But he wrote it with somebody else. And when they asked him if it was autobiographical, he said, "This isn't my story, but I spent a lot of time in the same places as a lot of these people," meaning he had been to a ton of rehabs. And when that film came out, in an interview, he said he had been to 17. Now, when you start researching it, hello, Barbara Waite, people will say that he had been to over 20. So obviously, from the time he was sober, he's had to go to a couple more rehabs, right? But Alan Jackson may have taken this case because it's going to be a big time case, and it's going to propel him into bigger stardom, bigger fame, which will give him an opportunity to spend a lot more money. He may have funds from his grandpa, Carl Reiner, who was also amazingly successful. He was. Carl Reiner was probably. So you're going to hear this term a lot. If you've never heard this one before, I promise you by the time this trial is over, it's going to be part of your vocabulary and you're going to wish people would stop saying it. But the term Nepo baby, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but this is a child of a nepotism, right? Where families take care of families within certain industries. And I heard it 6 times today researching this. They're already calling this kid a Nepo baby, meaning if he didn't have the family that he had, he probably would have been in prison a long time ago, right? There may have been some funds that were handed down from Grandpa, but by all accounts, he generated no money. And from everything I could read, he had to reach out to family often for cash. He does have credit cards. I did some research on this. The guy has his own credit cards. You know, Audrey in Denver says, "I wish I was a Nepo baby." I think a lot of people wish they were, but it really doesn't seem to pay off a lot, right? Marlon Brando's kid, probably, Charlie Sheen's kid. Sure, he's rich as, Martin Sheen's kid. Sure, he's rich as hell, but look at the absolute dumpster fire of a life that Charlie Sheen has led. When you grow up with that much privilege, not only do you have access to cash, but that fame and being so closely associated with somebody like Rob Reiner or somebody like Martin Sheen gives people a desire to weasel their way into your life. And he was homeless on and off for years, Lisa White. Now, his grandfather was still alive when he was homeless, right? By way of full disclosure, if his grandfather left him money, and by the way, I did research that, but it's not something you can get a lot on. It's those kind of things are difficult. Hello, Ann from Mass. But he did spend a lot of time homeless on the street. Now, last night we talked about this. We talked about the tough love angle, right, of what happened. And he had been kicked out, which is what led him to being homeless on the street in Maine, in Texas. He listed all the places that he spent a lot of time homeless, living on the streets. Puka Vista says Rob himself was a Nepo baby, a very successful one. And sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes there are people, and if you look at everyone else in his family, right, all of his Nick's siblings seem to have done fantastic. He did not, which I think again points to a dual diagnosis. This isn't just drug addiction. This is mental illness in a really big way. But he got, by his own words, he was really hurt when the tough love thing kicked him out. Now, allegedly, one of the things that was heard at that party is that they were talking about bouncing him out. He had been living at his parents' house again, and they were talking about bumping him out, saying, "You're going to have to go." Now, if the biggest trigger from your past, if the thing that you can't get over with your parents is that they kicked you out in a moment of need, having your family say to you, we're going to kick you out again, could be enough to send somebody whose mental illness and drug addiction is out of control. And they also said that one of the things that they had been saying to their kid was, you got to get sober and you got to get on your medication. That to me screams, right, mental illness. So get back to Alan Jackson. What kind of defense do you put on for someone like this? Now, before you go, well, it could be a whodunit. So after this party was over, at some point, so Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle, left the party at Conan O'Brien's, kind of embarrassed by all accounts, right? So they leave the hooded sweatshirt kid still at the party. When he makes it home, he kills mom and dad. Now, we don't know the exact breakdown of when that happened, how that happened, anything like that. But at some point, he kills his parents. And there's not a ton of information on the murders. People magazine is the only source that said their throats had been slit. But it has allegedly been done in a coup de grace kind of a thing. In other words, that was the final injury. They had been stabbed multiple times. Yes, Alan Jackson is representing him. And so after that happened, he leaves the house at some point and he goes to Santa Monica, where he checks into a hotel called the Santa Monica Pierside Hotel. He books a room for one night using a credit card with his name on it. And they said he looked tweaked. The employees there said when he walked in, he looked tweaked out. Now, take that for whatever whatever you put into that, any kind of stock or value or whatever. But he looked tweaked out. He didn't look injured, and they didn't say they saw any blood on him, which is interesting because the room that he checked into was absolutely covered in blood. By all accounts, they said that the bathroom, the shower was just completely covered in blood. He had taken sheets off the bed and covered the windows. Now, we talk a lot about drugs on this channel, and there's a lot of people on this channel who are in recovery. Hanging sheets up over windows is something that heroin probably isn't going to do to you, but methamphetamine most assuredly does. And there's been a lot of jaw jacking about the fact that this guy was abusing crystal meth. Whether or not that's true, right? These are the rumors kind of that are going around about this case. When he went on I believe it was the Dopey podcast, when he went on that one and talked about his addictions, he said, well, I'm sober now. He meant off of heroin. He said, I do smoke pot and I take Adderall. If you're somebody that has a predilection, like a bad one for abusing drugs, Adderall is a stepping stone to doing amphetamines or methamphetamines. Obviously, it's an amphetamine. It's in the same family. And if you're taking it responsibly, it's a fine drug, right? And if you need that, and you have ADHD or whatever, that's great. But if you're crushing them up and snorting them, it's probably just walking you up the chain to getting back to a drug that you can take on a more abusive fashion. And it does sound like he had a problem. So this is an ugly case, and the fact that there's blood all over that hotel room could mean a couple of things. Since nobody at the front desk seemed to think that they saw any, could have changed his clothes out at the house, and his body could have been covered in it. He could have showered that stuff off. But they said there was blood all over the inside of that. And I said last night, when someone kills somebody using an edged weapon, right? If you're using a knife to kill people, there's a decent chance that this is going to cause, there's a decent chance you're going to get cut. This is the kind of thing where you absolutely could wind up cut yourself. And I think that there's a chance that could have been it. He could have gone in there and been washing off injuries. And something that may also lend itself to this is that he didn't show up in court this morning. Now, that's one of those things that there's a bunch of reasons somebody doesn't show up, right? And what they said in court was he wasn't medically cleared. That could mean that there are cuts on him. I doubt that. I think more than likely it's because he's on suicide watch at the moment, and they have reported that as a fact, which means not that they went in there and thought, well, he killed his parents, he probably wants to kill himself. That won't get you on suicide watch. Might get you an observation cell. But to get suicide watch, you got to say, I want to kill myself, right? I want to take myself out. And then they're going to put you in the oven mitt, and they're going to put you in a room and make people sit in front of that glass door and watch you around the clock. And usually it's inmates. They do it in 4-hour shifts, and the cops will come by periodically, right? They'll check in often, but they're going to have an inmate who works with something called My Brother's Keeper is usually the name of the program. At least that's what it was in the places that I've been. Would he be dope sick already? Barbara Waite, by all accounts, what he is abusing now is methamphetamine. So if he starts coming off of meth, he's going to sleep his butt off. If he was abusing opioids, and no one seems to be saying that that is something that happened. After his last stay in rehab, he seems to have put that demon to bed. And unfortunately, he kind of said, well, that's the addiction. So I can do anything other than that. It seems to be the stance that he took. On another podcast, he said, I kind of wanted to get back to my old lifestyle. And by that, I mean smoking pot whenever I want and eating any pills if I want to do that. I wasn't going to do the heroin or whatever. So I doubt that he's dope sick, but he would be going through a period of time. So methamphetamine lasts in your system for about 72 hours, right? That's, after that it's tough to test for. But if you've been on a runner, if you haven't slept in a week or two, I mean, there are people that stay up for unbelievable amounts of time on this stuff. But if by some chance he's on a good runner, he might sleep for a week. I watched a lot of people come into to county jail and literally not get out of bed, for 5-6 days and just sitting there and sleep. They might wake up to use the restroom. They're not showering. They very rarely eat. They just sort of sleep it off because that drug releases so much brain chemical that you're up. It's like seeing someone in a manic state. They're not going to go to sleep. And by all accounts, he was abusing this stuff, so he probably wasn't spending a tremendous amount of time sleeping. And if he had been on one of these runners, and this brings up a lot of interesting stuff. So that blood in the hotel room, they're going to obviously test this, and they're going to bring it back and test it DNA style against his mother's and father's blood. This is going to be very damning evidence. If you're Alan Jackson, that's a hard thing to fight. But when you look at this, I don't think Alan Jackson is hoping to go in there and find this guy not guilty. Even the daughter that found him, right, allegedly said to the police, this is going to be my brother that did this. Everybody called him a ticking time bomb. He had displayed violence in numerous times over the course of his the years of him being a drug addict. None of that violence seems to have been reported to authorities. I mean, it's been talked about on podcasts. The father's talked about it. The mother's talked about it. But it doesn't seem like any of this got reported to authorities where he could have ended up in a system that might have helped him. And it's hard, right? MK Ultra, I kind of doubt it. Dog face pony soldier, I kind of doubt it. And the reason that I say that is normally when we hear stories about MK Ultra, and if you think this is tinfoil hat stuff, do some research because we definitely had the MK Ultra program. It's very easy to research. In fact, we paid a bunch of people off for what we did to them. So it's super easy to research. But those people we had to get, right? We being the government had to grab those people and have them for a long extended period of time. And I don't know that we've seen that in this guy's life. He went to rehabs, but normally those weren't the type of facilities that they were grabbing people from. It just wasn't. But you never know. I mean, you can't rule it out. I think what we have here is a guy that had mental illness, that didn't take medication, and he abused the dog crap out of drugs for a long period of time. He was homeless, but he wasn't homeless for unreal amounts of time. And even throughout that homelessness, we're going to have to hear about this, but I have a feeling he was calling home and begging for cash through that entire process. I could be wrong, but I've heard him quoted as saying, I can do anything I want and not get in trouble. I'm not playing games with you. He literally said that. I'm a guy that can do anything he wants and not get in trouble. That's a frightening thing to hear a drug addict say. It's really giving them an opportunity to just go buck wild. And if what you're trying to do is get the attention of the people that you don't think love you, I've talked about this a lot on here. I've seen people in prison that would come in and act the fool, right? I watched a guy do this over a television set, right? He stood up on a chair to change the TV. And the cop came over and said, you can't stand on a chair in here to get up on the TV because if you fall down, we have a remote control for each TV. You just got to talk to your people, meaning white, black, because the TVs are segregated. And this guy lost his crap on the cop, right? Jumped up, kicked the chair back, started freaking out. And cops don't fight people in prison. They hit something called the deuces, and a whole group of people come in, right? Every cop in the building comes in and beats the crap out of you. And he would do that and just get his ass kicked and had no problem with that. And I said to Q one day, I'm like, what the hell drives someone like that? And he goes, any attention is better than no attention. So if you're not getting love and you're not getting care and you never had that your whole life, what you're used to is parents being really pissed off and slapping you around, and you'll take that attention. And I'm not busting on Rob and Michelle Reiner. We don't know the story, but we do know that the number of films this guy made and the amount of not just as a director, but films he's been in. If you go look at the film credits and the TV credits and all of the things that, because I thought to myself when this first started, I'm like, well, I remember him from All in the Family, and I remember him from Wolf of Wall Street. And then there was that, he did Spinal Tap, right? He did the other Spinal Tap. It's like there's hundreds of credits to this man's career. This isn't a guy that was spending 300 out of 360 days a year at home. Sorry if you answered this. My computer hates me at the moment. Would Nick get off by reason of insanity? I have not answered that yet, but I think that this is probably a great question. You know, Jana Banana, I kind of would be surprised if there wasn't something in this guy's past other than just being kicked out of the house. But if they kick you out of the house and you end up on the street and you're addicted to heroin, the things that you do to get heroin, sometimes, you know, if this guy was forced to sell himself, and if there's a ton of people that have gone down that road, if that was him, he may blame both of them for that. And if you don't go through the process of therapy and counseling and talking one-on-one with the people you think injured you, then you could just carry that around like luggage for the rest of your life, and it could end up with what we just saw, which is pretty ugly. But Alan Jackson has a really tough road ahead of him. So if you want to do not guilty by reason of insanity, here's how it works. First, there is a case. First, there is the case that you have to go in and try. So you go in and they prove you guilty, right? After that case is over, there's a second case. And now you're going to say, yeah, he did that. We're not even going to contest that, right? We just had that case. And very often they won't fight it much. Because if you're going to do not guilty by reason of insanity, you don't usually necessarily fight the first one hard. So it's almost like a sham. You know, they go in and they have this trial, but the evidence is so strong that you know that the guy's guilty. They're not going to fight that. What they're going to say is he wasn't in his right mind. I would argue that nobody is in their right mind. But this is, no, you're good, Susie Hughes. This is going to be very difficult, right? An uphill battle, because what you have to demonstrate for the jury is that he didn't know right from wrong. You understand? He didn't know right from wrong. So if you leave the crime scene afterwards and it looks like you're trying to get the hell away, hello, David, that shows that you knew what you just did was wrong, right? And when they went to arrest him, he was trying to fight the arrest. He was trying to get away. This is another thing that very often will show the knowledge of what you did was wrong. You don't want to be. So if you look at the textbook cases where people do get off for reasons of insanity, a great case is the guy that shot Ronald Reagan, Hinckley. So he believed at the moment that this was going on that he was doing this to impress Jodie Foster, because he fell in love with Jodie Foster in the movie Taxi Driver. And in that movie, Robert De Niro, right, there's all of this. He was following the plot of the film. This is a guy that didn't understand right from wrong in his head. He was not quite right, right? So those kind of cases where you literally can say they didn't know right from wrong, but it's not usually I got into a fight with somebody or with my parents, right, at a party, and 7 hours later I killed the both of them. You knew they were your parents, right? You knew that there was an argument. All of these things show a rational mind of some sort. Now, everyone's got to be a little crazy to kill somebody, right? But that's not, like, Jeffrey Dahmer was not found insane. He was eating men's body parts. He was building an altar out of bones and skulls in his house, right? He was soaking human beings in chemicals to get rid of them. And he was drilling holes in people's heads and pouring muriatic acid in there because he wanted to build a sex slave. So he didn't have to go out and get more of these people. He wanted someone brain dead that he could just abuse. I mean, does that sound crazy? But the fact that he was covering up everything that he was doing showed that he knew what he was doing was wrong. So it's a very hard thing to prove, right? It's a super hard uphill battle to prove this. I think that maybe the best that they can hope for is that this doesn't get upgraded to something like the death penalty. And I know I'm going to have a bunch of people that are going to send me emails and say, there's no death penalty in California. I heard big dollar lawyers say that on podcasts today. Now, you don't have to worry about the death penalty. You might want to look that up, right? I promise you they have the death penalty. the current governor suspended the death penalty, and there had been a long period of time where they would not go after anybody for the death penalty because they weren't going to do this anyway. In 2025, they changed that. So now if it's a particularly heinous crime, you can try for the death penalty. It doesn't mean the person's going to get killed, because right now there's a moratorium on it. But there could be a governor that comes in and says, screw that moratorium. Now, if you got a death sentence, then when they take that moratorium away, then you're moving toward the chamber. And that's just kind of how it goes down. So could that happen? Yes. And there was a press conference today where they came out and said, we haven't made a decision whether or not we're going to go for the death penalty. Still on the table. In order to have a death penalty case in California, you have to hit special circumstances. And there are things like, you did this in the commission of a rape, right? That's a special circumstance. Or you killed somebody in the commission of a different type of crime. If the crime was motivated by cash, right? You killed them just to get money. These are special circumstances. Killing two people is a special circumstance. There is one special circumstance that's called torture. And it doesn't mean that you have to tie somebody into a chair. If the weapon that you used to kill them was brutal, and let's say your mom had to watch you kill your dad, that could rise to the level of torture. Not that it would matter, because the two would be a special circumstance that could get him capital murder. It will be capital murder. Now, whether or not they take capital murder and go for the death penalty is open to interpretation. If, however, they say, we're not going to go for the death penalty, capital murder carries life without the possibility of parole, right? It's fascinating from a legal standpoint, and I'm not being macabre, but this is going to be a case that the whole world freaking follows. And I have a feeling that there will be more people watching this case than any other. I'm going to continue to follow it because this is going to really blow up. And I believe that it's also going to bring up a conversation about drugs and how people are treated when trying to get sober, because, and I mean no disrespect to the dead, right? But it's very easy to go from, I love this person so much, I want to make sure that they don't end up, ruining their life with drugs, to, I love this person so much, I'm going to enable them to spend 30 years of their life or 20 years of their life getting wasted. If this kid went into rehab at 15 and they were still basically taking care of this kid financially for a long period of time, and he got to a point where if he wanted to live in California where he could get away with whatever he wanted. Hey, Brock Bandy, and he literally said that, right? I can do anything I want and not get in trouble in California. So he would get sober so that his parents would take him back. And I'm not making this stuff up. He talks about this on podcasts. Now, granted, you got to read between the lines, but he said in one podcast that when he was in Maine, he knew he was going to relapse. And he didn't know he was going to relapse because it was stressing him out and the pressure was getting to him. He said he wanted to get back to California where he could have fun. So, but he knew that if he relapsed in Maine, they were never going to take him back. So for him, this was a very manipulative game, right? And I'm not trying to be a dick when I say that, right? I don't remember, did they deem Gene Hackman and his wife's death from natural causes and not their daughters for insurance money? No one has been charged in that. That is just a sad case, apparently, that so far anyway, until we hear otherwise, that's just a very sad case of a person that can no longer take care of themselves, and someone else who had, if you got two people in there and someone has a heart attack and you're the caregiver, you're in really bad shape, right? And it's just a sad case all the way around with Gene Hackman. But this has like Menendez brothers qualities to it, except for the fact that by all accounts, everybody in Hollywood was waiting for something awful like this to happen. Phil Hartman and his wife, Dog-Faced Pony Soldier says, yeah, Bryn Hartman was Phil Hartman's wife and was partying a lot, doing a lot of cocaine, doing a lot of drinking. And I love Phil Hartman. He's one of my favorite comedians of all time, but I deep dived the crap out of that case, and he was not a great boyfriend, not a great husband. He was a guy that would back away very quickly, right? Just could not basically engage. So as she was screaming for help, he was crawling into a corner. And she started hanging out with some people that we've really gotten a chance to see what they're like. Allegedly, she was partying with Andy Dick that night. I don't know how much you followed Andy Dick, but you talk about a star that has blown his life up like nobody else. Andy Dick is a great example. Tons of like assault cases, and He's just, right now he's homeless. He's sleeping on people's couches. But allegedly, Bryn was doing pretty well and trying to stay sober, and Andy Dick took her out and partied with her and gave her a bunch of blow. And that night she shot her husband, which is really, really unfortunate. Yeah, he was completely the woman in that relationship. Unfortunately, he would drive us crazy if he was our friend at that time. John, you know what? I agree. It felt like the Menendez vibe to me too, says Sharon Lyles. What's odd about that is, if you remember the Menendez case closely, right, 2 brothers did this, right? The brothers took out both parents. Every other sibling in that family has been very successful, super close with mom and dad, love them to death. There doesn't seem to be anything on the surface that says that he was abused by his parents. And I know that people are going to go, well, you just don't know. You don't. But if you take somebody that's wildly addicted to drugs and kind of pissed at their parents and put them through 20 rehabs, there's a good chance that kind of stuff is going to come out. And I knew what you meant, John. I absolutely knew what you meant. What you meant was he kind of needed to be more of an alpha in that situation, at least be able to stand up and go, hey, you know, I'm fighting with you. Instead, he just ran away at every, and I loved Phil Hartman. He's one of my favorite people, but he was not, he was the worst possible case scenario to be with somebody that was in that kind of a situation, trying to take care of somebody. If there is karma, he will be sober and on the right meds in prison, and he'll have lucidity, live with what he did for the rest of his life. You know what? Lucidly, pardon me. Live with it for the rest of his life. That's a possibility. Here, you know what? I'm putting this up here just because this isn't the kind of thing you're ever going to read on my channel again. Ow, 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 just pinched my nipple between pieces of firewood. Okay. I mean, what are the odds we put that one up there again? Is there a mental health issue past addiction, which normally other issues drive you there? But, okay, so if you're dual diagnosis, if you're someone who suffers from mental illness, usually, right, according to science, most mental illness is an imbalance in the brain. So when you take something, you take some of the medications that they write, they're called like SSRIs, right? That's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So a chemical you already have in your brain, serotonin, they're gonna regulate how much of that gets absorbed into the brain and how much isn't, so that they level out, right, some of the problems that you're having. If you decide to stay up for unbelievable amounts of time, you're exacerbating that mental illness in a way that probably can't even be explained. You know, you take somebody that is really having a chemical imbalance in the brain and they start doing methamphetamine. God forbid he was shooting it. We don't know that he was. But if you shoot that stuff, I remember watching a doctor talk about this once. And he said, picture the day that your kid is born. And the doctor comes in and hands you your baby for the very first time. On a scale from 1 to 10, that is going to be brain chemical flush at like a 7 or an 8. The first time you walk into the bedroom of somebody that you've never had intercourse with, and you know it's about to happen, you might be at a 6. You do a shot of methamphetamine, you're at a 15. So the amount of brain chemical that just comes rushing out when you do this shouldn't be done with people who are already suffering from severe mental illness. Another sad story on the mental health of America. Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. Ken, you nailed it. Sadly, that is absolutely right. Newer studies are showing many mental health issues are circumstantial, not just chemical. You know what? Those reports are out there to be sure. Excuse me. But a shit ton of them are chemical. I mean, it's certainly not one or the other. There are definitely people out there who get sucked into the treatment. South Lake Tahoe, man, I know the South Lake area really well. Glad that you're here on the run. There are a lot of people who get treated with pills that probably shouldn't get treated with pills. But there are a lot of people out there walking around that are treating themselves with methamphetamine and heroin and things like that, that probably should never, should definitely be on some medication. One could cause the other too. Yeah, I'm not smart enough for that one. I'm really not. I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on YouTube. I have, however, spent a ton of time around people that medicate themselves. It's kind of what I spent the last 10 years of my life doing, is talking to people that medicate themselves. And it's astounding to me how many times those individuals will get on a medication from a doctor and it will cure their life. I mean, instantly they will get on something and that chemical imbalance gets leveled out, and people that you just thought were absolutely untreatable or beyond hope, right, all of a sudden start really doing fantastic in life. Now, I'm not a fan of big pharma. You'll hear me rail about big pharma all of the time. And unfortunately, in a lot of really advanced societies, you find doctors who, when you walk through the front door, they already got the script pad in their freaking hand. You know what I mean? You start to describe what you're going through, and they won't ask questions like, tell me a little bit about what was going on in your childhood. They're just like, oh, you're upset? You're having a problem with this? Let's try Prozac. Oh, you're having problems with this? Well, Butrin, right? Bupurion. And they just start going down the list until they find that magic bullet. And sometimes there is no magic bullet. Sometimes journaling, talking to people, connection, having a doctor, those are the magic bullets. But Alan Jackson now has to take this case and try to figure out what is the best thing that he can do for this client. Again, I don't know how the hell he's getting paid. Maybe the kid had a crap load of money we don't know about. Maybe Alan Jackson just really wants the publicity, in which case I'm not mad at him. And this may sound crazy, right? But from an ex-criminal standpoint, if somebody does something that is so heinous and disgusting that it turns your stomach, the best that you can hope for is that they get a really good lawyer. Because if they're guilty, they should be able to get proven guilty. That's the theory, right? If they really did it, that probably should be able to be proved. But if they've got Alan Jackson, then there's not going to be an appeal to worry about, right? Because he is a great attorney, and no one's ever going to go, well, if the attorney had done this, or this is ineffective counsel, or any of the things that people tend to come back on. You want him to get the same kind of defense that the president of the United States would, or anybody else that has just unlimited funds. Alan Jackson is a great attorney. In fact, if I have to sit and watch an attorney practice, I think I would rather watch Alan Jackson than almost anybody that's practicing today. He is a super entertaining attorney. He's very engaging, and he's got a mind that's fascinating. What he was able to do in the Karen Reed trial was to go up there and make the world believe that somebody else did it, and I believe it. There are still people that believe she ran that person over. I don't buy any of that. I think he did a great job up there. He saved her life. I think that maybe the best that this kid can hope for, and I don't know, I'm not Alan Jackson, but by looking at the case, this happens. He runs. He gets a hotel room. The hotel room's covered with blood. He's covering the wall with sheets. There's blood on the bed. There's blood everywhere in this room, allegedly, right? What's going to end up? It sounds like a country star. It really does, John. It does sound like a country star. Yeah, I will. I'll cover this one in a second. But what he might be able to be trying or hoping, best case scenario, would be to drop this down from murder one. Murder one means that there is premeditation, right? This is a hard thing from a murder one standpoint, because you had an argument at a party with a bunch of people around. The next night, the people are dead, right? That shows you pissed off. You go to the house. All of that kind of screams premeditation. But if he could get this down to murder two, or if he could even just get, he'd have to get it down to murder two because of the fact that there's two bodies. This is going to be capital murder unless he can get it down to murder two. And he may be able to do a diminished capacity defense, not guilty by reason of insanity, but this kid was so messed up that, maybe this shouldn't be premeditation. Maybe he just couldn't control himself. Debbie Zito. I can see that. Debbie Zito says, I'm guessing they acquired Jackson to avoid capital punishment and to push the mental health defense. Yeah, but I'm wondering who got him, right? And maybe I'm a cynical piece of, trash, but I have 3 siblings. If one of them had killed both of my parents, the rest of us would have been like, get a public defender. No matter how much, I love my siblings. If they killed both of my parents, I would want him to get whatever he had coming to him, and I wouldn't care honestly, but that's me. Maybe I'm just not that great a person. I was disgusted by what the president said about Rob Reiner. And now, before anybody decides to leave me comments, I know what Rob Reiner said about the president. I promise you. I followed this crap like you wouldn't believe. I know everything he said about the president. I know all of the stuff that he said that pissed Trump off. But I don't care, right? The two of them can scream back and forth at each other for as long as they live. When one of them dies, you better step up and be a human being, because all of the people that are affected by this will find you disgusting. And I voted for that guy, and I find him disgusting. I like what he did at the border, right? I like how he's fighting drugs. I'm disgusted by what the guy said. And I'll lose some subs for that, and I don't give a shit. I really don't. That's disgusting. The man's dead. Everybody on the planet knew who he was. That's disgusting. Step up to the plate and be a human being. He could, you know what? Lisa White says he should have kept his mouth shut. You know what he should have done? He should have stopped at the first freaking sentence. And if you read till the very end of it, not only did he go through the process of saying that this was caused by Trump derangement syndrome, which would lead you to believe that somebody else out there did it, right? Which is just horseshit. Maybe he didn't know that the son, it doesn't matter. He's not the kind of guy that's going to come out and say, hey, maybe I shouldn't have said that, which would have been a great thing in my opinion, but that's not going to happen. No. Look, David, you know what? This is the kind of political I'll do, because if you don't like me for this, blow, right? The exits down the hall, right past the water cooler on the left. These will be the same people that have been yelling on MAGA for the last 3 or 4 months. I voted for the guy, and I've said since Epstein that the guy's been disappointing to me, but this was the most classless thing I've ever seen anybody do. I'm not kidding you, right? The guy's not, the bodies aren't even cold yet. He said, this was a really sad thing. He should have stopped right there. But then even after he went off with the stupidity, he spent a good, 600 words talking about just how successful his administration has been. And if you want to take the death of somebody that is beloved, even if you hate his politics, there's movies he made you don't hate. There's shows that he made that you don't hate. No, David. This is something that I absolutely was going to talk about. I told my girlfriend this, right? Reese and I talked about this, and it's not something that I usually, get salty about. Politics isn't something that I spend a ton of time talking about. But there are times that, and I've said this in the past, there are times where the story I'm covering and politics go like this, and then there's nothing you can do about it. I'm not going to not answer that question. It's a question that everybody is probably wondering, and it's just gross. Renee, you get a pass today, because you know why? Because Angie Moe said, "Shame on you, Renee." I'm going to let her handle this one. So, or the dad abused the son and was indeed deranged. Well, maybe, right? Maybe, but I don't know that passes the smell test, and it's certainly a possibility. But we can do possibilities till the end of time, like the MK Ultra thing. MK Ultra, the people tend to remain somewhat normal until they pull the trigger, right? That's what it's supposed to be. The idea was to create a Manchurian candidate, and the idea was a Manchurian candidate just goes along, does whatever they're supposed to do, blends right the hell in. Then you pull the switch and they go batshit crazy. This kid's been crazy since he was 15, unfortunately. And I know that's a term that bums people out in mental health, but this guy's crazy. I'm sorry. What his level of he just showed hatred for his parents from a very, very ridiculously young age. So I don't think it's an MK Ultra thing. Maybe he decided to abuse just this kid and not any of the others. But this was a family that had a lot of siblings, right? There were a bunch of other kids around, and by all accounts, every one of them has had the same story. We just watched him from a very young age really struggle. But keep in mind, the abuse doesn't have to come from mom and dad. Everybody in Hollywood wants to be this kid's friend. His dad's Rob Reiner, right? Castle Rock. All of these incredible names associated with this guy. So everybody would like to, hey, Louisa, everybody would like to give him a little dope. Everyone would like to get him high. Everyone would like to hang out with him. And he could have been molested by anybody in Hollywood. That's a pretty disgusting place to be. He also could have done the tough love thing. His dad said that they took him to every specialist that money could buy, and they had money. Hundreds of millions of dollars that family's worth. So he takes him to all of these specialists, and the specialist said, here's what you do. And he did exactly what they told him. And at one point they told him to kick him out. Now, I've said this before. If he gets into an alley and ends up, getting on his knees for somebody for dope, he's probably not going to hate the faceless dude that just gave him money. That's not the person he's going to rage at. He's going to rage at his parents who are sitting in a mansion in California with hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm not saying that happened, but I think that's more likely what we're going to see than dad was abusive, especially from a defense, right? If you wanted to put on a defense that the dead father is abusive, this is the most beloved guy. By all accounts, there's nobody in Hollywood that seemed to hate him. And I know people are going to go, if everyone in Hollywood loved him, he's probably a dirtbag. Or they all want dad's money, but I don't know them. A lot of them have been fairly successful in their own right. A lot of his kids have done things, have been successful. And, this happens more often than we'd like to believe. But here's the problem that we are all struggling with, I promise you, because this is a phenomenon that I've seen happen now for a long time. We say Charlie Sheen's a great example. Marlon Brando's kid is a great example, right? We go, They had everything. How the hell could they not take care of somebody with that much money? Drugs don't give a crap how much money you got. And the ability to send somebody to 20 rehabs doesn't get somebody sober. That's not a lock. That doesn't. And the more expensive the rehab, the better chance you got of getting sober. I went through Betty Ford. Didn't do a whole lot for me, right? I got sober in a prison cell with a guy that never got a degree in anything, being the guy that led me out of it. You just have to. You just sort of have to have a miracle happen in your life. I say this all the time, and it takes a miracle to get sober. Those miracles are a dime a dozen, and I've never met anybody that can't be a miracle. But this kid didn't have any desire to be a miracle. From a really young age, he just thought, I can take this cash and freaking run with it. I got nothing but money in this family, and I can't get in trouble. The jackwagon has said this out loud on numerous different podcasts and interviews. I can do anything and not get in trouble, right? And he has talked about the disdain for his parents at length. You gotta wanna, you really do. And for some people, there's never that want to. Golly, I am on fire with anything that can be I can't tell you how many times I've knocked over water in the last 3 days. I ended up buying plastic cups because of it. So this one didn't break. Had that going for me. Money doesn't help the mind. It doesn't. And the sad thing is we all believe that, I've heard 25 people say it in interviews today. You know what? They had the resources to make sure that this guy could get sober. What the? I promise you that doesn't get it done. Charles Bronson was the next door neighbor of my grandmother when I was growing up. And he had a boy that committed suicide. Charles Bronson had unlimited amounts of money to go and help them. That doesn't get it done. And you know what does? Connection. Right? Connection to your dad is a really big thing. And if your dad is filming 220 days a year, doesn't matter how much he loves you, he's not there. Doesn't matter how much he cares, he's not there. And if mom goes with him, so you got what, nannies or hired help to make sure that you're not doing anything wrong, or they're getting you to school and all that. That may sound great. That's a tough way to grow up, especially if all you want is to spend time with them. And I've read a bunch of interviews in the last 3 days of the things that Nick Reiner has said. And one of them was, I just wish that I had liked baseball, because my dad and my brother would sit down and watch baseball together, but I was a basketball fan and my dad wasn't. He's pissed. He's 30-something, and he's pissed off that he couldn't sit on the couch and enjoy basketball the same way that his brother could enjoy baseball. Right? This, to me, that's not someone who's like, dad molested me. This is someone that says dad didn't love me. And I know I'm going to get comments and people are going to go, oh, poor him. And you know what? Look, I get it. I know why people say that. But I promise you that the things that happened to you as a kid, right? These are automatic negative thoughts. This is why I talk about journaling. This is why I talk about therapy, because those automatic negative thoughts, those ants will take you apart. And when he didn't have dope and he was sitting in a hotel room, or he was on he's hitchhiking his way across the country or doing whatever he's doing, he's got those voices in his head saying things like, dad loved your brother way more than you, right? You're worthless. All of your siblings are successful. You're just a drug addict piece of shit. And the only thing that makes that go away is more drugs. So you throw more drugs in and that voice shuts up for about 8 hours. And then you figure, family's got hundreds of millions of dollars. Guy's in his, almost in his 80s. When this dude checks out, I'll have enough money to just ride this out forever. But you know what? Dad can die, and it's not going to fix the hurt that he's got with dad, or mom for that matter. By all accounts, they weren't ready to give up on him. But by all accounts, they also had said again, if you don't get on medication and get off drugs, we're kicking you out. Now, keep in mind, right? If my theory of the tough love thing really holds out, abandonment issues carry on through lifetimes. Yeah, absolutely. And if by some chance, right, my theory is correct, and this is a hangover from tough love from the first time they kicked him out, and he ended up on the street and had to do things to get dope that he was not real happy with, and he blames them at 32, awake for weeks, not taking your medication, doing tons of meth, and they say to you, if you don't get on that medication and you don't get off the dope, we're kicking you out. Those ants started going, see that? They're going to do it to you again, right? They told you they loved you. You made that movie, right, with your dad. Something about Charlie, and that was going to heal everything. It didn't heal anything. He just did that for the press. And those voices, and I don't mean hearing voices, I just mean ants, automatic negative thoughts, constantly, all day long, just beating the piss out of you. And then you snap. And I'm not buying him. Look, I think the guy ought to spend life in prison. I don't think that there is anything, right, that is going to come out in that trial that's going to make me go, yeah, You know, I remember when OJ was first busted, I wanted him to be innocent so bad. I need to do a show on OJ because if I say what's on my mind right now, people will lose their crap, and I need at least 45 minutes to explain whatever the hell I was about to say. Honey, how are you? I'm going to do an OJ show one of these days. Entitlement is messed up. Sadly, my youngest son really believes that because his dad has a lot of money, he's supposed to be supported and live a privileged life. Well, Lisa White, this is pretty common, unfortunately. A lot of celebrity kids are raised by nannies. They don't love them. It's their job. It's very sad. It is. And what's sad is it's so freaking common that if you go, oh, I got the best nanny in the world, I'll give you the number for the service. It doesn't even sound messed up when these people are saying stuff like this. It's, how do you do that job? How are you going to go out on location? You're filming in Europe. You're filming in Montana, right? Your kid's got to go to school, and you're going to be gone 220 days a year. I would say maybe don't get anybody pregnant until you're ready to kind of tuck that away for a while. It may sound crazy, but the video High Rent is a perfect example of battle with ants. You know what? It is a great video. And I'm a fan, by the way. It may come as a shock to you, but I am a fan. I really am. This is a cat whose mental illness is on display. Super talented. You know what it reminds me of? And Cricket, you will probably know what I'm talking about. But the guy that wrote the Basketball Diaries, right? What was his name? He did the song "People Who Died." Someone help me out. James Carroll, and the Jim Carroll band. Jim Carroll wrote the same way that Ren does, where it's mental illness and it's drug addiction, and they just cut a vein and they bleed out, and you get to look at it, and it's hard, right? It's a difficult thing to look at, but he reminds me a lot of, and I don't mean the movie, but if you get the book, right, you read some of Jim's poetry. The movie was fantastic. I think they did a great adaptation of the book, but to read his poetry and stuff, the Basketball Diaries is incredible, absolutely incredible. And the best story of that is that Jim got sober. You know, he was somebody that kind of saw the light. And I tell you what, it's a great lesson, man. Jim Carroll had a lot of freaking issues, and he went through some ugly, ugly things. And he went through tough love and a lot of other shit, but he journaled, and he never stopped journaling. He wrote poetry, he wrote songs, he wrote his book, but he never stopped journaling. And I think that's probably what saved him, man. You still love Leonardo DiCaprio? Yeah, he's there's something disturbing about a guy that starts dating girls in their 20s, and when they hit 25, they go, "Get your old ass out of here." Like, that's disturbing. There's something about Leo that's a bummer. There's also a lot of video of him and pictures of him at Diddy parties. However, that doesn't mean, right, that he was doing all of the Audra Endeavor says, Leonardo, meh. It doesn't mean that he was doing everything that he's been accused of. And I'm changing up on things like that. I'm keeping a more open mind. I do like younger women, but I'm old. You can get away with that when you're old there, Reese. Considerably younger. Reese is a little younger than me. I used to spin People Who Died when I was a club DJ. I'll tell you something. I still know the words to that song, every single word. And if you know the words to that, when you watch the movie The Basketball Diaries, like the kids sniffing glue on the roof, like all of those lyrics, everybody that he sings about in that song absolutely passed away. Those are not, he didn't make that up for the song. Those were people that he lost in his life, and wrote a pretty heavy tune about it. Lanky wanker, really tall guy. I think his daughter's mom is Penny Marshall. One of his daughters was from his first marriage with Penny Marshall. He adopted her after the divorce, and she actually lived on the property that he got killed on. She was not, by all accounts, the daughter that found the parents. That would have been Romy. She lived down and across the street. It was a very tight-knit family. They were all very close. He was a friend of mine. That's right. Tara knows. It was, yeah, I am a really, really huge Jim Carroll fan. I was devastated when Jim Carroll passed away. That one rocked me. Jim Carroll gave me hope when nothing else did, for real. He was a junkie in the kind of way that I was. He was just one of those, like, hardcore, all-in kind of junkies, and the fact that he got sober, and he was one of the reasons that I did more journaling than probably anybody on earth. And I'm going to do a show on that coming up too, because I've had some things change in my journaling, and I'm going to talk about that at some point. 12 years old, fell from the roof on East 29. Kathy was 11 when she pulled the plug. 26 Reds and a bottle of wine. Bobby got leukemia, 14 years old. He looked like 65 when he died. You remember the movie? The guy was pushing around in the wheelchair. Heavy song, man. Heavy song. Do. Yes, he has 2 daughters. One he adopted from his marriage to Penny Marshall, and the other 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, all came from the wife that he was with for the rest of his life. And by all accounts, they had a banging relationship. They really did seem to love each other, and that's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? It really is. He's said a lot of beautiful things about that. You know, men tend to be a little bit immature, and I've said that since the first day I started this channel. We're different. We're built different, and we tend to grow up differently, right, than women. And I think that's kind of the beautiful thing. I think it's the reason that so often we complement each other, sort of the male and the female, and they can come together and make each other better. And he was an advocate for that. He was an advocate for that, whether you're gay, straight, whatever. He was a firm believer in the fact that finding someone to complete your life is an important thing. And just a little side note, the ending of When Harry Met Sally changed because he met Michelle while that was being filmed. The way that it was originally written, they didn't get together at the end. They went their separate ways. But he found himself in love and started to believe in love again. You know, you're making a movie like that after a divorce. But if you look at his movies, just about all of them, especially the sort of the love story ones, they were pretty simple stuff. It was usually a guy that really badly needed a woman, and like the Billy Crystal character that was played in that movie is kind of autobiographical. He was a guy that thought that woman was way out of his league, kind of thing. I think it's beautiful that they had a happy and a beautiful marriage, and I think that's worth celebrating. And you know what? There's nothing that dude said politically that I agreed with, but I loved his art, and it's just a terrible way to die. And if you're somebody that takes any kind of joy in that, man, stop watching me. I don't like you. Plain and simple. And if it bums you out that you know I go off on the president about it, man, if you can use somebody's death and say shit like that, man, I just can't respect that, man. Not at any level. Doesn't mean that you can't do things later that I go, wow, I think that was a decent decision. I'm glad that you did that. But just ugliness, and that ugliness needs to stop, right, across the board. Go read the things that some of the people who are switching parties are talking about. How politics used to be people sending you letters going, man, your policies suck. You're a loser. You know that? You're an idiot. Now they write letters and say, I hope your kids die. Right? I hope you get cancer and die because you didn't do this bill. Like, what the F happened to us as a society? And the answer to that, sadly, is, yeah, Billy Crystal's fantastic. Billy Crystal has been devastated by this. They were best friends. And a lot of people were really close friends with him. One of the things I also find disturbing is, you know, the word clout or clout chasing, like that's brand new stuff. Nobody ever talked about things like that. But read the tweets from these people in Hollywood. And every tweet, and I love that they're respecting it and they're giving their respect. But you know what? It's absolutely disgusting for someone to say, oh, I just spoke with him 3 days ago. We spoke all the time. It's like they all want to get in that last tweak of, man, you know how tight I was with this dude? I mean, we were tight. We were just really, really close. I don't know, man. Like, if somebody passes away, I'm not going to go, you know, talk to him the day before yesterday. Calls me every Sunday. I don't know, a little creeped out. Apparently, everybody and their brother was supposed to be meeting him that night. I've heard 5 different people now that said, I was meeting him that night, including the Obamas. Everybody apparently was meeting him that night. Sounds like people chasing clout, which is just kind of disgusting at the same time. It's a different kind of disgusting. Billy Crystal actually walked by the house because he had heard about this. So did Larry David. A lot of really, really big, heavy-hitting Hollywood people live in Brentwood. This was a mile away from where O.J. Simpson killed his wife. This is just that part of the world. right? So this is going to be an interesting case, because all of the people who are going to get called as witnesses, all of these people, this is going to be, it's going to capture the imagination of the world. It is. You know, people love to watch Hollywood when it's not doing well. That's Schadenfreude, whatever you want to call it. And then there's also just sort of the Billy Crystal has lost a lot of friends. Robin Williams and now Rob Reiner. Yeah. Billy Crystal was I loved all of Billy Crystal's movies. Really enjoyed watching him. And I mean, he's been in Rob Reiner films since Rob Reiner's first film, right? He put Billy Crystal in as the mime, right? He was the mime in Spinal Tap, the original one, which was Rob Reiner's first film and the first mockumentary ever made. And one of my favorite films, man. Mel Brooks, all of them are going through this. I mean, all of the people that were close to this guy are really struggling. Marilyn Monroe died in Brentwood. Boy, I could do a show on that too. The drugs that killed Marilyn Monroe, I believe, weren't in her stomach. It's worth probably talking about it sometime. Do you think Nick may plead out? I don't know what the hell he could plead out to, right? I mean, what do you take off the table? You could take the death penalty off the table and he could plead guilty. But for a person that has been, that's a good question, Andre. But for a person that's been as spoiled as this kid has been throughout his entire life, as privileged as he has been, and I know you're going to say he was homeless for a while. He was. But he was Rob Reiner's kid, and there was nobody breathing down his neck. Prison's a scary place where you got to look over your shoulder at all time. If he pleads out, what could they do? Take the death penalty off the table. But this is capital murder. It carries life without the possibility of parole. I don't think you hire Alan Jackson to plead out. I think you hire Alan Jackson in hopes of getting 25 to life, right? He's 32. If you could get this down to like a murder 2 kind of a thing, where this was done as crime of passion, that kind of a thing, where you're just sort of batshit crazy momentarily, not guilty, but if you could sort of get the mental illness thing on the table enough to get first degree taken off. If you could get second degree and they could give him 25 years, he'd have some life left, even if he got 35. But but the way it sits right now, I don't know what kind of plea deal you put on the table. The only thing that I think you could do is to take the death penalty off of the table, and you can hire a public defender to plead out, right? Alan Jackson is somebody you hire when you're going all the way to the box. You're gonna go at this. There's definitely, I don't see any chance of that, but I'm wrong a lot, so who knows? But I don't see any chance of that. It seems like a really, really expensive attorney, and this is a litigator. This is a trial attorney. There are people that you hire, like Wes Watson, the jackass fake alpha male. I'm going to be doing a show on him too, because he's really losing it. But he had an attorney that just makes plea deals, and everyone's been reporting in the past that he had a 5-year plea deal on the table for that assault. He asked for it. They didn't turn that down. They asked the prosecutor. The prosecutor turned that down. They want way more time out of him than that. And so now he's hired a different attorney, and it's one that only goes to trial. He's not somebody that ever cuts a deal. If you hire that guy, you're doing it to go all the way to the box. And my gut says he's going all the way to the box. Did he have siblings? He did. He has 3 siblings, 2 sisters and a brother. So, and one is a half sister. So Rob Reiner had a child with Penny Marshall, who he adopted, but all of them loved this guy. They all loved him. He's just everybody loved me too. You know what I mean? When they remember you before you were a drug addict, they remember you when you were cute, you were a good guy, and they just keep praying and hoping. And then someday maybe you get sober, and then they're back in your life in a really big way. But it doesn't happen for everybody. You know, it's and that's sad, but it's the truth. It doesn't. The drug addiction is a terrible disease. It's an ugly disease. It's a disease that the symptoms don't just mess with you; they mess with everybody else. And that's the reason that people don't like calling it a disease, because if you have diabetes, that's your problem. But if you have heroin addiction, that's my problem, and everybody around me is affected by my problem. They have to watch you die, and they have to watch you destroy everybody that you come in contact with. It's a disgusting disease. But when we can all start calling it a disease, and we can all recognize it as something that absolutely needs treatment, and there's no other way, you're not going to, the assholes would go, well, if you had more willpower. If it was willpower, man, if it was willpower, we wouldn't have a drug problem. You'd be shocked at how most people have a buttload of willpower when it comes right down to it. Willpower doesn't keep you sober. It can get you clean, but to stay sober, you have to find out why you were doing dope in the first place. what caused this guy to keep going back and keep going back and keep going back. And if you don't deal with those issues, you'll be 80 years old trying to get a bag of dope. It's just kind of how it goes down. James Wood was classy. No doubt about it. I'm not a Trump fan, but your words are awesome. James Woods was classy, like you regarding this horrible event. Thank you. You know what? Here's the thing, man. I'll say this, right? Across the board. Rob Reiner's legacy would have been a shitload better if he could have been a little classier with the things that he said. He attacked the hell out of the president. But once somebody dies, all that crap's off the table, right? But I wish everybody in Hollywood would shut the hell up and make movies. And if you're a rock star, shut the hell up and make music. For real. I mean, so you sell out arenas. You think I want Axl Rose telling me who the president of the United States ought to be? Well, then why is Bono any better? I mean, I'm not trying to be a dick, but I don't care who Sting thinks is a jerk, man. Right? I don't care. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't even like politicians telling me most of the time. I'd like to believe that I'm smart enough. Good night, John. I would like to believe I'm smart enough that I can look at all of the issues and make a decision based on the ones that are important to me. But unfortunately, there are people, like if we look at statistics, you realize what percentage of people don't get their news any other place but from late night comedy shows? Well, that's a hell of a way to make your decisions on who you're going to vote for. It's freaking terrifying. And it would be just as terrifying if it wasn't all left and it was all right. Right? I've said this a million times and it pisses people off big time, but you should have to take a test in order to vote. You should. What does this person believe? Right? You should have to be able to write down actually what this person has voted on, this kind of thing, so that you're making an educated vote. I took a political science class in college, and Bill Clinton was running for president, and there was a woman in that class, and every time they brought up his name, the woman would go, I don't know, he's really handsome. He is a handsome dude. And I said to my brother-in-law who's in the class with me, I said, if she says that today, I'm yelling, you're killing me at the top of my lungs. I said, I swear to God, I'm going to yell, you're killing me at the top of my lungs. Because she said it, and even the professor would go, who cares, right? How about if you tell us a little bit about his policies? And I went, you're killing me. I did. Said it like 10 times, except I had a more whiny voice at the time. What's the difference between God and Bono? God doesn't think he's Bono. That's it's actually funny as hell. You should have to take a test to run for president. Montgomery Angel, I will not argue that point with you. I really wouldn't. Or any other office, right? I've heard some politicians, and I won't say their names, but there are politicians that said things like, well, they had to pass a law, right, so that so-and-so wouldn't run for president again, and that person died in office. These are the kind of things that I'm a burnt-out drug addict, right? If I know this, then maybe a senator or a congresswoman ought to. So is it a proven fact Trump used these awful words? Roberta, I'm afraid it is. I'm afraid it absolutely is. Whatever Guns N' Roses is way better than U2 and Bono anyways. Tara, I'm not going to argue that, right? But at least Axl isn't telling me who to vote for, right? But if he did, and I said, well, I'm going for this guy because Axl Rose said that, people would be like, what the deuce? But there are people who really put a lot of stock into this. I talked about this last night, but Johnny Carson, in a pretty famous interview, was getting pushed. And the guy was like, so who are you supporting? He's like, I'm not telling you. And he's like, why? Don't you think that that's not very courageous? I mean, people are going to call you out for not being courageous on this. He said, because people love me. And I don't want anybody voting for this guy or that guy because they love me. That's a terrible reason to vote for somebody. I don't want anybody to be influenced by me. I tell jokes for a living. Why would I want to influence somebody's politics? It's a frightening world. So I'm following this, people, and I'm going to keep following it. And I'm going to keep deep diving, and I'm going to keep calling the jail to find out what's going on with the guy. He was supposed to appear in court today. He did not. Alan Jackson appeared for him. Once he is cleared medically, he's going to have to go in and he's officially going to be charged. And he's going to be charged for both of these murders. It's going to be a tough road ahead for Alan Jackson and for Nick Reiner. And I'm pissed at the kid. I really am. I'm pissed at him. And there's a part of me that would love to see them give him the death penalty. I know that that's not very nice or Christian or anything else, but there's a part of me that would love to see that. There's also a part of me that thinks we really need to find out what the hell made this guy so messed up. And maybe that's what Alan Jackson is thinking too. And maybe we'll be a better society, even a little bit, if everybody just tries to figure out exactly what caused this, because this ain't normal, right? killing a mother and father is a really bizarre thing. A 78 and a 68-year-old person, a woman that brought you into the world, and a father that paid your bills for your entire life. It's a very odd thing to me. And it's not something that I think just goes like this, right? There's something there. And if this gets, traced back to the fact that kicking him out at his most vulnerable time in life caused this amount of anger and hate, well, then I've been shitting on the tough love concept for a really long time. And maybe that's why Tommy, my guy, and I have discussed a tentative earliest possible moving date sometime late next year. The earliest. We've also picked a front runner house we like. I love it. Congratulations. How cool is that? It could have been a text message, in my opinion. This is a tragedy. And I'm not going to preach to anybody here, I promise. But I'm of the firm belief in my particular faith that no matter how tragic and disgusting something is, it'll get used for something fantastic. And I've seen that in the last year. I've had some really rowdy shit happen in my life that really have turned out to be some of the most beautiful. It's crap that roses grew out of in a way that I didn't think possible. So it would be really nice if something good were to come out of this. And maybe it's a discussion about mental illness. Roberta, Truth Social. Go over to Truth Social and you can read I guess they don't call them truths or whatever they call them over there. David Bradshaw, I agree with you 100%. Regardless of your political leanings, what he said was just wrong. Hey, I'm doing a show on this coming up. Some really interesting stuff. Good Lord, that looks like the car from Starsky and Hutch. There's some interesting stuff that just kind of broke in that case, right? And apparently they found a device that, for all intent and purpose, is a device that you could cremate somebody in your house. And they found it in David's house, according to, alleged by a private investigator. And this is being reported on some really big platforms that do a lot of research. So it's not something that I feel weird passing on. But I have been deep diving that case for a hot minute. There's just not much to talk about. I'm not trying to. There's a lot to run with. It's BS. But what we know is that she was found in that Tesla, and we don't know the condition of her in that Tesla, right? We really don't. There's been a lock on all of that. But I am absolutely going to be covering that in the future. That was my dad's in the 70s. Had a zigzag man under the hood. Somewhere in the glass was painted on. The zigzag dude with the spliff. A friend that had that tattoo. That is too good. So if you followed the show, looks like a tomato with a racing strike. I think that was a Huggy Bear quote. Cool looking car. All right, people. No, Rob Reiner did not have siblings. I'm sorry. You meant, did Rob Reiner have siblings? I don't know. I'll tell you tomorrow. I don't know the answer to that. I do not know the answer to that. It was a Torino. It was a Torino. He had it on the hood, but it was not on the car. It was under the glass. Like, oh, I got you. All right, people, I'm Tommy. I will see you on the next one. I got a girl I got to call. Between now and then, do me a favor. Put a little love in your heart. And you know what? People that take joy in someone's death, get them out of your life. For real. They're cancer on two legs. People that get off on seeing somebody die in this kind of a fashion, they're cancer on two legs. Get rid of them before they eat you alive. All right? I'm Tommy. I'll see you on the next one. Roberta, go to Truth Social. It's like X or Twitter. That's where Trump said it. You should be able to find it there. All right, people. See you on the next one. I'm Tommy. Have a good night. God bless.